Good morning.
Good morning.
Bring who you are as you enter this congregation this morning. Bring your best self and your struggling self, your mistakes and your triumphs, your shortcomings and your recommitment to good. Bring yourself here and open your heart to beauty, to truth, to the door that is open to the presence of love. Here in this community, we are trying to journey together on the peaceable way, trying to hammer out division and hatred and all that separates one from another. We try, and we fall short, but held in love, we try again. We come together this morning to join our hearts in prayer, to raise our voices in song, to remember our promises, and to vow to live by them once again. Good morning. As we begin our worship service this morning, I have a song for you, so I'll invite you to rise in body or in spirit. The words to this song are printed in your order of service. And so this song is 2/3 a repeat after me song and 1/3 a we'll sing it together song. So lines 1 and 2 and 4 and 5 are repeat after me, and then 3 and 6 we'll sing together. I will start singing. We're gonna sing it 4 or 5 times through, so as we go, you'll get the hang of it, and your part is in the parentheses. Sound good?
Stay risen for our unison affirmation, also printed in your order of worship. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. Thank you. Well, good morning again.
Good morning.
Welcome to First Parish in Bedford, a Unitarian Universalist congregation. I am your parish minister, Reverend Annie Gonzalez Milliken, And I'm very excited to have with us this morning a guest preacher, Jaimie Dingus, who is the intern minister at the UU Church in Reading. I've known Jaimie for quite a while, and in fact, back when she was in college, she served on a young adult team that I supervised when I was in my old job at the Unitarian Universalist Association. So it's a real delight to have her preaching in our pulpit this morning. There are not as many announcements as usual. This is a happening place with a lot of wonderful things going on, and that is still true, but it's not quite the deluge that it sometimes is. I do want to draw your attention to an event happening this Friday evening. There will be a spaghetti supper with games. There will be food for you to come and have. It's free. And so come, bring the family, come alone, come with a friend. It's a great time to connect with others at First Parish and to have some food and fellowship together. So hope to see you there for that. My one other announcement is that next week our service in honor of Women's History Month will be focused on raising some issues around gendered violence. And we're going to be singing a song we've sung a couple times before at these services called Quiet by the singer Milk. And so we're looking still for singers to join in helping us lead that song. If you're interested, let me know. And we'll be rehearsing just before the service next week to make sure we're ready for that. But if you're a singer and you want to sing that powerful song, let me know. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jaimie to lead us through our Time for All Ages.
And I'd like to invite all of our children and young folks to come on up front if they'd like to join me for our Time for All Ages. Good morning. And you can actually come all the way up on the chancel with me if you like. Oh, it is so good to see all your faces and have you with me this morning. Yeah, if we can have a group on one side and a group on the other so our adult friends can see too, that'd be really great. You can come up too. All right, wonderful. That's okay, you'll get the message from the pews too. So this morning, I thought I wanted to tell you a little bit about our 7 principles. And I'll tell you I was inspired to talk about this because in the congregation I serve in Reading, believe it or not every single person knows every single one of our principles by heart. I'm sure that's not a problem here in Bedford. However, and I have a kind of fun way for us to learn about them. So look what I've got. I know, we got some bricks. I call these our principle blocks. They look like this. Can you see? Got our principles. And so we're going to go through them, and we're going to think about how our principles connect to one another, and we're going to build some structures because these are principle blocks, and they're pretty fun to build with. And I might need some helpers, and that's why I have you up here with me. Are you guys jazzed to help me with some blocks? Excellent. All right, so our first principle, number 1, and on our blocks we have a more simplified version of our principles, so I'll read both options. The inherent worth and dignity of every person is our first principle, but it might be easier to remember if you say, each person is important. And what comes after 1? You help me count up? We got 2 next? 2, right. 2 is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, or be kind in all you do. Does that sound like something you're learning here in this church, that we want to be kind to each other? Yeah, I bet. All right, and we're going to start building a tower with these. And what comes next? Yeah, you can call them out. 3. Acceptance of one another and encouragement to spiritual growth in our congregations. We are free to learn together. Does that make sense? All right, it's starting to get tall. And we still have 4 more. What's next? 4. A free and responsible search for truth and meaning. A search for what is true. All right, it might start getting a little bit wobbly. Can someone help me hold it? Do you want to help? Yeah, you can reach out. Can you come over and help too? Can you help and make sure the tower doesn't fall over? Yeah. Yeah, that's perfect. You stand on this side so it doesn't fall that way. What's next? 5. Yes, we've got 5. The right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. All people need a voice. Now it's getting super tall, I know. You're on the taller side. Can you help keep it steady? Thank you, bud. Great. What's next? 6. Great. It's gonna get even taller. The goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all, or build a fair and peaceful world. Do we think we can go all the way up? All right, and what's the last one? Can you yell it out real loud? 7. Greatness. So 7 is respect for the interdependent web of all existence. We care for our planet Earth. Now, these are our 7 principles, and they're all really good ideas, and they help us understand who we are and what we believe. They form a foundation, but when we stack them up like this, it's not very stable. In fact, if I do this, they all fall down. And when I think about that shape and that structure, the reason it's so unstable is because when you start with 1 on the bottom, inherent worth and dignity, just about 1 person, and you go all the way up to 7 at the top, that's the whole world, the interdependent web. You get like a reverse pyramid, and it's too big and heavy on the top for just 1 person at the bottom to support. It gets unstable. So I have a different way that we can build our principles as a pyramid that's going to be a little bit stronger. So we're still going to start with 1, and if you guys can help me find them as I call them out. So this is 1, and can someone help me find 7? You've got 7. Great. Great, so have them ready, and we'll do 6 in a second. So we've got 7. So we have each person is important, and we care for our planet Earth, 1 and 7. And we can see how those are connected. We matter, and the whole world matters too. All right, and so what is next after 1? 2, great. And so we have be kind in all you do, which we'll put here. And can you find me 6? Great. All right, so we're gonna put 6 here. Build a fair and peaceful world. So we're gonna be kind in our relationships with one another, and we're gonna build a world that is kind and just and fair for all people. Do we see how those 2 go together? Now what do we need next? 3, exactly. We are free to learn together. And then it's 5. Will you pass me 5? You got it. This one knows. Yep. All people need a voice. So we're free to learn together, and all people need a voice. So we can all learn with one another. We're on our spiritual journeys. And when we learn things, when we know the truth, we should share that, and we should be able to make decisions that impact our lives. Does that feel right? And then right at the top of our pyramid, we have number 4, a search for what is true. And we as Unitarian Universalists are on a lifelong journey and a lifelong search for truth and meaning, and that's at the top of our pyramid. And do we see how this is a much stronger shape? Yeah, because they're blocks, you probably still could knock it down, but we're not going to because this is a strong shape. Would you mind stepping just to the side? I think there's some adult friends who'd like to take a picture and get a better view. All right. So this is what I wanted to show you this morning. I wanted you to think about our 7 principles and how they connect and how they're related to one another and how we might learn to live more just and kind and peaceful lives by following these principles. So thank you so much for learning with me and helping me stack these blocks. I think you're probably going off to your classes in a little bit. Does that sound right? All right, thank you. Right. Well, I'd like to invite us now to sing once more. Will you rise in body or rise in spirit for our middle hymn? It's number 1011 or 1011 in your teal hymnal, and it's called Return Again. Our reading this morning is from my colleague, the Reverend Teresa Inez Soto. They write, "People are not long division problems. Their resources almost never divide evenly into their concerns, which is how we end up with remainders of fear and anger and such tentative beauty, having only recently been liberated from the imposition of thousands of inapplicable shames. People do not imagine being messy and unresolved until their broken hearts remain unmentionable, eventually 0.3 repeating awkwardly at first, and then with intonation and rhythm meant to simulate being just fine, no problem. People are not long division problems. You cannot, should you, meaning, well, try this, fix, or solve them. Reminder, they will almost never come out even. What you can do is be a welcome in a wounded and suspicious world. You can recognize the person as they are. You can assume that without the gift of their humanity, even when it is complicated, none of the sum of us can arrive at the answer of who we are meant to be, collective and whole.
Hi, I'm Sandy Bosnowski, a member of the lay pastoral team. And if you'd like to share with our caring community a candle of joy or sorrow or concern, just please come forward now, light a candle, and focus your thoughts. Please be brief. Thanks. I'm lighting one final candle for those thoughts and joys and concerns that we keep silently in our hearts. And I'll remain by the candle stand after the service if you'd like to light a candle in private.
In this community, we support one another in our joys and sorrows, in our grief and celebration, and we also support each other by giving our money so that we can sustain this community for folks to find that care. Please give generously to this morning's offering, and it will be gratefully received.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Robert Weinstein is a library science student living in Brooklyn. A few years ago, he went to a theater near his home. He took a deep breath, got up on stage without notes, without much preparation, and told a version of this story. Years earlier, he had been a younger man in his late 20s and was about to go live abroad for a year. He made a last stop by the nursing home where his grandmother was living to spend the afternoon with her. And as luck would have it, that day her nursing home was having an oldies music and ice cream social event a real cool time. And as the handsome young grandson in the room, he quickly became the star of it. You can imagine. He told this audience that afternoon, he saw his grandmother smiling along to the music, proud to be showing him off to her friends, and he caught a glimpse of who she was on the inside. He saw this vibrant person who had always loved to dance, who years earlier had danced professionally, and on a whim, he asked her if she wanted to, right then, dance with him. They twirled around the day room, laughing and smiling, and then he asked another of the residents, and then another, and another, until the whole room was out on their feet or out in their wheelchairs, spinning and swaying and smiling together. And there was joy, and differences were dissolved, and the sterile room felt warm and alive, and for a moment they all really saw each other for who they were on the inside. They returned to the homes of their own souls, kind, reaching for community, wanting to dance together. Robert told this story at a story slam hosted by The Moth. I'm a huge Moth storytelling fan. Do we have other fans in the congregation? Yes, that's what I like to see. If you don't know it yet, though, The Moth is this creative project where people tell true stories from their lives on stage in front of an audience without notes. It's gotten quite the following, and there's events all around the world, shows and storytelling workshops. And sometimes these stories are so funny, you end up laughing out loud listening to them on the bus, like Omar Qureshi's story about dismantling Islamophobia in rural Missouri by entering, of all things, a pulled pork nacho eating contest. The irony there not lost. And sometimes these stories are so tender, they bring you to tears, like Elizabeth Gilbert's story about loving her powerhouse of a partner as she passed away from pancreatic cancer. These stories are honest in the important ways. They get to the heart of what matters most in life, and they're more intimate and more vulnerable than most of us get to be in our day-to-day lives. What I love most about them, what I love most about storytelling even, is that it's a profoundly courageous choice to tell the truth about your own story. And in telling that truth, you find a little piece of the answer to the question, who am I really? Catholic priest and theologian Richard Rohr writes, when you get your who am I question right, all of your what should I do questions tend to take care of themselves. What he doesn't address in this pithy little quote is that the who am I question can be a tough one to answer. In his story, Robert sees a new truth of who his grandmother is, proud and joyful, wanting to spend the afternoon connecting, dancing with him. And in that discovery and in that truth-telling, he gains access to a little piece of who he is too, generous and loving, taking a step towards vulnerability, knowing exactly what he should do. I think he learns too the truth that Reverend Teresa Soto points us to in their reading, that you can recognize the person as who they are. You can assume that without the gift of their humanity, even when it is complicated, none of the sum of us can arrive at the answer of who we are meant to be, collective and whole. He learns that we are called to the courage that happens when we know who we are and whose we are, and we reach out in love and service. Sometimes I think courage is telling the truth about ourselves, accessing our own identity. Sometimes this courage looks like harnessing the power of our stories to make our communities more just. When I think of courage, when I think of truth-telling, when I think of being brave, I'm often reminded of the lives and stories of the peoples I've met working as a chaplain in prisons here in Massachusetts. I'm struck by the courage of one story in particular, and because this person chooses often to tell his own story, I'll share it with you. This man, who I'll call Dave, is in his mid-30s now, and he's been incarcerated for over 15 years. Imagine that. Practically a child when he first went in. And though he maintains his innocence, he's stuck with a sentence of life without the possibility of parole. The prison that holds him is notorious. The water is so poisoned that the guards' dogs don't drink it. And the administration is so cruel. Everywhere he looks, the world is sick. No one is well. And yet, somehow, he's able to access a deeper truth, his deeper truth, a truth we too affirm in Unitarian Universalism, that he has dignity, that he matters, that his story and his truth have value. He returns to the home of his soul, and from that place of knowing who he is, he's become an advocate. Through his disciplined study, he knows our legal system inside and out, cruel as it is. He's using his courage to create a more just world, one with second chances, where all voices are heard. From inside this prison, he's organized a community of free activists around his cause. It's called the Emancipation Initiative, and it works to end life without parole sentencing here in Massachusetts and to restore voting rights to people who are incarcerated. And the way he does this work is he shares his own true story freely with whoever will listen to him. He organizes community conversations and demonstrations and protests and legislative actions. His whole life happens in a 6x8 concrete box, and yet somehow he's found a way so that it doesn't have to. He chooses to be courageous. He works for a better world. He knows who he is and whose he is, and he reaches out in love and service. Like Robert, Dave has been called to courage and called to community, and so I wonder, what have all of you been called to? Who are you meant to be in this world? Who do you think you are? So often that question is asked with disdain dripping from our lips, but I wonder if we asked it more gently. Who do you think you are? Asked it with more wonder, more courage. How do you return to yourself and know your identity, your honest truth, down deep in that place where spirit and bone meet, where messy and broken hearts are holy even when they feel unwhole? What is the process that brings us all back toward that primal knowing of who we might be? When I ask myself my own "who am I" question, I find the answer in music. I found that most of the questions I ask myself, I find the answer in music. But the song that comes to me is one called "We Shall Be Known" by Mamuse. I think you sang it here about a month ago, so you're familiar with it. But if you've forgotten the line, it goes like this: "We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires." Mamuse suggests that a way to access the "who am I" question is by looking around to see who it is we surround ourselves with. Who it is that we share our tables and our meals and our stories. Who is it that we choose to be authentic and brave for? If Mamuse is right, and I'm tempted to think they are, then maybe a little piece of the "who you are" question, a little facet of your truth, can be answered here in this beloved community. These people who hold and honor your story, You know, I have the best view in the house from up here, but I wonder if you look around you in the pews this morning and think to yourself, we shall be known by this company we keep, by the ones who circle round and tend these fires. These fires. And dear ones, what then of courage? If we build our courage and our stamina for justice out of our own sense of self-knowing, our own deep, honest identity, and we use that courage to better the world, where are our Unitarian Universalist congregations fitting into all of this? I'm struck by a passage by my colleague, Unitarian Universalist minister and president of Starr King School for the Ministry, the Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt. She writes this, saying, "By no means are we Unitarian Universalists perfect. We often fail as much as we succeed, yet even when we have broken our vows 1,000 times, we return to this essential work, the work of justice and liberation for all. We do the work best when we remember what church is and what it is not. Not a place to hide, not a place to get away from the world, not a place to pretend that the lives we live, our particular situations are not terribly complex, confusing, deeply sad. Instead, these communities are the place where we stand with one another, where we grow with one another, where we look the world in the eye, attempt to see it clearly, and gather strength from our own stories and from each other to face what we see with courage and with joy. I'll add that religious community is the place where we surround ourselves by the people who help us to be who we want to be in the world, the people who help us answer the who am I question, the whose am I question. It's in community that we discover our own truths, that we take deep breaths and boldly tell our honest stories, where we return to the home of our souls. And it's from these deep places of love and relationship that we cultivate the kind of courage we need to transform our world. Friends, this morning I shared a story for all ages about our 7 principles. I showed how they fit together, not as a tower about to topple, but as a pyramid, an arch. One child told me once, a rainbow, perhaps. What I wanted the kids to see, what I want you to see, is that we can pull our courage from our internal sources. We can feel rooted in our inherent worth and dignity, and we can feel called to the interdependent web of all existence. In order to build a strong and transformative faith movement, we have to have that connection. The internal piece has to match the external, the commitment to interdependence, our sense of belonging to the whole world. We're called to the courage that happens when we know who we are, inherently worthy, whose we are, committed to community, and we reach out in love and service to the whole web of existence. We need it all. And friends, we know a scary truth that we are living in hard times in a broken and bleeding world. We know that tides are rising and trees are burning, the earth is shaking and the disease is spreading, and the leaders are failing us over and over again. Perhaps it feels like hope is dwindling too. And so I say that whether it is through small acts of kindness, the slow work of loving relationship, or our dedicated commitments to justice, it is our responsibility. It is our call to harness the truth of our own stories and turn that into the courage we need to make our communities strong, collective, and whole. Years ago, I heard my colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Wynn, preach this truth. She said, "My cowardice makes the people around me more cowardly, and my courage makes the wider community more courageous. I think that's an important truth, so I'm going to say it again. My cowardice makes the people around me more cowardly, and my courage makes the wider community more courageous. Friends, we must then be courageous in the face of this broken world. I believe we're made stronger in relationship. In our congregations, through covenants, we promise and fall short and promise again to live the world we dream of. It's the most radical act of our faith lived out. We see the suffering and we dream anyway. We commit anyway. We make that change anyway. These past several weeks, if you've been watching the news, I wonder if you've shared this sentiment with me, that it's given me much more headache than hope. And yet, I found a story a week or so ago that returned me to myself, returned me to that home of my own soul. I saw the news that a federal judge had reversed the convictions of 4 activists who had been working with the No Mas Muertes, No More Death movement. They were arrested for leaving water and supplies for migrants at our southern border, and their charges were overturned. We know that humanitarian aid is never a crime, that we must drop those charges, and they were. They were exercising their sincere religious beliefs with the goal of preventing death and suffering. And I suspect you share my pride in them acting in concert with their Unitarian Universalist beliefs, their commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of each person, to justice, equity, and compassion, to the interdependent web. That was their justification. They used our principles in court and won. They provided resources, and they showed us a way forward into courage. I'm thrilled for their success, and yet, even if they hadn't been, they show us the kind of serious, sincere commitment, serious courage we're trying to build towards. They knew exactly who they were. Their values taught them that. And they knew exactly whose they were, interdependent with all people on our planet, particularly those living on the margins. And they reached out, despite consequences, with love and service to make that suffering end. And so I say, courage, my friends. We do not go this way alone. Instead, we go together into this deeply unwell world. The truth that I know so far is that we are continually discovering who we are. We find ourselves when we tell our stories with conviction and heart. We find ourselves in our deepest values. We find ourselves in relationship. We find ourselves once again when we choose to work for justice and dignity for all people. Yes, I believe we can choose to hold on to who we are and whose we are, and we too can reach out in love and service. Dear ones, let's be courageous. Blessed be, and amen. And now, will you join me in singing our final hymn? It's number 131, Love Will Guide Us, in the gray hymnal. Let's sing together.
Love will guide us, Jesus,
remain risen in body or in spirit and reach out and take the hand or touch the shoulder of someone near you. Dear ones, it is time now. It is time now that we thrive. Here in this faith movement where we are known for the unique individuals that we are, called once again by our own stories and by our values and by our courageous relationships, let us keep thriving, keep connecting, keep reaching out so that in time we might lead this world with love. Our worship is over, our service begins. Love and blessings on the way. Blessed be and amen.